Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban. I'm very excited to talk to you today about how to network strategically in an untraditional way, methods that you may not have thought about previously in your career. Now, if you've never seen my smiling face before, you can learn more about me and discover more about this live show and podcast at coacheurban.com. Now, who am I? I am an executive coach, and what I do is I help driven, experienced, and evolving leaders like yourself remove roadblocks so you can achieve more impact and influence. And when it comes to achieving more impact, that's exactly what we'll be talking about today. How to impact and influence, and most importantly, connect with those key stakeholders and decision makers that will make ultimate decisions, when it comes to your career advancement. Now, what's interesting is this is a big topic. I don't know about you, but we can find it very difficult from time to time to connect to those key decision makers. So if that's something that you might be concerned about, particularly if you're making a career change, this is a great place for you. And I want to welcome you to the show, welcome you to Career Coffee Chat Live. If you are watching this live show later on or listening to the podcast, please don't be shy. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions and or give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, whatever it is on the particular podcast channel you are listening to. Now, as you tune in and hop on the show today, please don't be shy. Say hi, say your name, say where you're from. We want to welcome you to Career Coffee Chat Live. Come on in, pull up a seat, and let's have a great conversation around non-traditional ways to connect with key decision makers. Now, joining me today is a very special guest. She is amazing, and she's also the president of the Houston ICF, that's International Coach Federation chapter in Houston, Texas. So what we'll be talking about today with Lindsey Honari is strategic networking. And these are game-changing, non-traditional styles. So you can ditch the boring virtual networking events and learn where the real conversations are being held and how to stay top of mind, which is important, with key decision makers from all over the world. Now, some top tips you might hear today is discovering new methods to reach leaders and stay top of mind, learn how to navigate and connect to conversations that matter, and elevate your career by leveraging unique networking methods. Now, Lindsey Honari, who is an MBA and associate certified coach through ICF, again, that's an International Coach Federation, and as I mentioned before, the president of the Houston chapter of ICF. She also has a mission to help people like yourself thrive as professionals. Lindsey's approach encompasses both executive and career coaching, and I am very excited and extremely honored to have her here with me today. I want to welcome Lindsey to the show. It's great to have you on, Lindsey. Thank you so much for joining me for a very interesting conversation, because what we're talking about today, I don't really know. I'm not clued into these non-traditional ways of networking. So I'm really excited.
Hi, Erin. I'm so excited to be here. And hey, everyone out there. I'm Lindsey Honari. Very nice to meet you. A brief aside, I am fostering a puppy I found. Fortunately, the puppy is going to be adopted, but like all puppies, is a little noisy and boisterous. So to keep the noise down, you may see her in the background. So just
I love
get that out of the way. I'm a puppy whisperer and an executive coach. What can you say?
That's awesome. So give us a thumbs up or a shout out if you also have a puppy or adopted animal in your life. And I think that's amazing and awesome. Thank you for doing a much needed and very, very important role in helping people have healthier lives. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like people who are connected to animals in some way, if they're able to, do have a more of a calmness, something about that, really being able to, that pet, calms anxiety, can alleviate depression, all those things. What do you find, Lindsey, as an executive coach?
It's really interesting. If you think about it, as coaches, we're trained to tune in to our clients' emotional state. It's not just as a coach, you coach the person, not the problem. And it's so funny because my animals can be my coaches. They know when I'm upset. They know when I need an extra snuggle. They definitely can raise my, depending on how they're behaving. I couldn't imagine being without them. So it's just interesting. And, as a side note, I know of some coaches that use equine coaching and talk about an animal that's super sensitive to the individual. They will put an individual or a group of people out in a pasture with a horse. I don't know enough about it, but it's called equine facilitated coaching. Here in Texas, I'm sure there are plenty of folks you can find to do that. But getting back on track to the question you asked, I'm a dog girl. What can I say?
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure those of you who are tuning in now and are listening later can relate to some of that. And by the way, as you tune in, please say hi, say where you're from. We'd love to welcome you to the show. And don't be shy, ask your questions because we want to be here for you and help you uncover those roadblocks and remove those roadblocks between wherever you are today and where you want to go to achieve your goals. So speaking of achieving goals, we're here to talk about non-traditional ways to strategically network. Now, Lindsey threw this out at me I guess it's been over a month ago. She was like, yes, I'd love to be on your show. Let's talk about networking via Twitter. Mic drop. What? That was my response. What? I thought Twitter was a place you go to complain about things. I did not recognize that Twitter was a place you could strategically network or join an important conversation with decision makers. So I'm anxious to learn more about this. So I think that's DB Tunzel who's tuned in from LinkedIn. Great to see you this morning. And like I said, don't be shy. We're going to talk about some things that I have no knowledge in. So Lindsey, fire off. How did you get into networking on Twitter in the beginning? Because you're an executive coach, clearly you're connecting with key decision makers and clients. And you mentioned to me a while ago that you do become a part of that conversation on Twitter. So what does that look like? And how did you discover this to begin with?
I discovered this through a back door. And prior to the pandemic, I wanted to learn how to write better. And I took an amazing interactive live cohort course called Rite of Passage with WRITE, Rite of Passage. And I found this person through his writing on Twitter. And he had built his entire business, not in the typical, humble brag that everyone puts out on Twitter, but his thoughts and coalescing his thoughts. And so while I went in there to learn how to get my thoughts down, I wasn't sure if I was going to blog or journal or even publish. It opened up this huge world to me and a community because I'm Gen X. So what are we? We were told to keep your head down, don't stand out for the wrong reasons, don't say anything, this whole idea of social media. Now, I have a Gen Z daughter who grew up in social media and her main form of communication, and I was at the polar opposite. It was asymmetric risks, right? You never know what, and obviously as the culture has changed, there can be some real consequences to writing and publishing online, and Twitter was the absolute no-go for me. And I was shocked to hear how people were using Twitter. And it really came down to a quote, and they mentioned it in the class, and it really stuck with me. And I don't know who said it, but on LinkedIn, when you post what you've done, recruiters reach out. On Twitter, you post how you think, not what you think, how you think, and hiring managers reach out.
Now that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Because if we think about what do we use the different formats for? Now, Instagram has every social media platform has its dedicated users, and it resonates with an individual or their company that they feel is going to get the most engagement for them.
Right.
As people who are looking to change careers, absolutely you want to be on LinkedIn. I say LinkedIn is a great way when I still do some career coaching. I will tell people to find 5 posts on LinkedIn that speak to them. Doesn't have to be exactly, the right fit immediately, but I want to know what speaks to them and why. I think that's very interesting as they create and craft what their next thing looks like.
Right.
But at the same time, LinkedIn is used again for job search, and unless you are a LinkedIn ninja like you are, Erin, it can be intimidating on how do I use this effectively. And when I went into this writing program and connected with these other people on Twitter, they were writing about what they were passionate about or what they wanted to learn about. So I was immediately sucked into the world of baristas, people who really took the art of coffee making to a very high level, to people who they worked on Wall Street, but they were really interested in climate change. And not only that, but companies that were moving the needle in technologies. And many other people who had interests or career goals that were nothing like what they were currently doing, but they were using Twitter to learn by following specific people or companies, and then posting their own thoughts. And it wasn't just, and so we can talk about a little bit how you get into the Twitter highway, how you get into that, but it was just eye-opening. And I saw it time and again, how people were making connections with folks that they never in a million years thought that they could. And it was through Twitter. So there's some very specific rules of the road as a job seeker or a career changer, and we'll get into that in a minute, but I'll stop there.
No, that's fascinating. I really appreciate that backstory because it helps us understand the why and how you arrived there, because superficially, I don't know about those people who are tuning in right now, but for me, I always thought, well, Twitter is a place I want to stay away from, right? Because it's gotten some negative connotations, and there was some posts by some social media folks who were like, they drive, social media companies, and they're like, oh yeah, Twitter was getting ready to die, and then Trump got on Twitter. So, and then that gives some people a certain perspective of the platform. And historically, it's been seen very differently, but it sounds like to me, it's not a complaint platform. It's a thought platform.
Yes.
And some people process through writing. Other people process visually, Instagram. And other people are more relationally driven. So you might want to link that to Facebook and or LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is amazing in its own ways. And it can be also equally frustrating in its own ways too, because to get connected to decision makers, that's not always that easy. And Hussein has a very interesting question as well. He said being close to the decision-making sources is a great thing. Yes, obviously, if you make good use of it. But just a simple slip, he mentions, may destroy everything. How can stability be maintained in such a sensitive site? Well, I'm definitely interested to hear what your thoughts are, Lindsey. And I would just say, just at the 50,000 foot level, don't say anything you wouldn't say to your grandmother. Okay. And Lindsey, what are your thoughts about that?
So leave the politics out of it. That's a really good question. And it also depends on the culture in which you're coming from.
Right.
So the rules of the road of your own culture. I would say for the most part, you're absolutely correct, Erin. People think of Twitter for outrage and opinions. That's part of it, but this is what was uncovered to me, was there's this whole other Twitter where it's thoughts and ideas. So a lot of people are familiar with Naval Ravikant, Chamath Palihapitiya, Balaji, I'm forgetting his last name, and they post their thoughts. They're deep thinkers, and then people comment, and they keep the conversation going. So if there's a thought leader, and it doesn't have to be a super well-known name, but if you read an article that you find is interesting, or there's a particular company, follow them on Twitter and just ease into, that's how do you get into the Twitter freeway or Twitter highways? You ease in, you see how people are responding, and don't get sucked in to stump the chump. Don't get sucked into screaming contests. Post your thoughts, post your ideas. Hey, this is really interesting. I just link articles. That's a great way to get involved in a conversation, is to link similar things that back up your thoughts or ideas that is related to the topic. And I know I'm sort of skipping all over here, but think of it this way. We all have digital footprints, whether we like it or not. Just by carrying a smartphone, you have a digital footprint, because all of the companies track us, what our habits are, all of these data points. So you have a digital footprint, and use it as a signaling device to showcase your interests, your skills, your knowledge, even if it's not related to what you currently do or what you want to do. And so this is how Twitter can add to what I like to call your virtual resume, because you can build that network with others in your field of interest.
And as you mentioned, those others could be decision makers versus they're just potential recruiters. And it sounds a little bit like how I fell into LinkedIn, because my story is not a person who is like, oh, well, let me become a known coach. That's not how I got into LinkedIn. It's not how I know I have this long and deep history with LinkedIn. I fell into LinkedIn because I was posting as a thought leader. And I didn't start off doing that because I wanted to become a thought leader. I was just kind of frustrated because I didn't have anybody to talk to. in my company, I was the solo change agent and knew my craft. I wanted to reach out to other people and, most importantly, share with other people what I was learning, best practices. Hey, I did this and this is what happened. You might be able to, might help you too, right? So I was just doing this in a give it, pay it forward mindset, and it took off. And all of a sudden, and that's how I got 2 job offers, was through this pay it forward mindset, sharing my thoughts and ideas on LinkedIn. And now there is a lot of noise. So a lot of people may ask, oh gosh, how can you even be seen on LinkedIn? Well, there's a method to the madness, and I bet there's a method to it as well. You mentioned the freeway. How do you how you get your car onto the freeway? And if you live in Houston, that can be interesting.
Stay on the Peter Road forever here.
You're like, I know I shouldn't slow down too much, and I shouldn't put my signal on too soon because they might lock me out. So there's this timing thing. You're like, gotta get my car on the freeway, and I don't want to be locked out, and I don't want to miss the boat, and I don't want to stop because you'll never get on, because it'll be like Monday before you get on. So how do you start to ease your car onto the Twitter highway?
Sure. So first and foremost, if you are using a different name on Twitter, set up a separate account under your real name. Or if you're in stealth mode, something that's related to the field you want to go into.
Okay.
That's first off. So, if it's, Gray Crazy Lady is not my Twitter handle, and it shouldn't be yours either. But it could be, I don't know, let's say I'm going for the low-hanging fruit here, say crypto, but it could be crypto girl or crypto coach or interested in crypto, whatever that is, if you're not going to use your real name, but tie it to what you're interested in. It's kind of like with your email. Like back in the day, we used to say, if your email handle is drinksallnight@gmail.com and you're applying for jobs, use your username. Same thing with Twitter.
Right, because you want your digital footprint to be professional versus, I don't know, Rambo Slayer 1.
So the second thing to do is after you can figure out how do you want to present as the world. Is it your real name, or is it something related to where you're interested in developing interest or expertise? The second thing you do, and this was really what made Twitter okay for me, as your typical paranoid Gen X, keep in professional services, keep your head down, don't dress too crazy, don't dye your hair, which was one reason why I left corporate America, because I'm a little bit of a rebel. But that's for another story. The second thing is go into your settings and set up filters. I have every political candidate's name blocked. I have certain words blocked. I have certain things that I just don't want in my Twitter feed because I don't want to get riled up. So anything that's a hot button issue for you that you're worried, it's like setting up your guardrails. So think about a freeway, they're guardrails.
That is so important. And I think you can also do that on Facebook. I don't know about LinkedIn. I'm not sure.
LinkedIn people are a bit better.
And they're a bit better at behaving usually. So yeah. But you can do that with other social media platforms. And that's a big, big deal because I don't know about those of you watching, and or you, Lindsay, I'm sure you may agree. We have a lot going on. I don't need. There's a reason why I don't listen to the news. I mean, I go out and do actual research, not just search, and I don't listen to the news. If I want to know about something, I'll go find that information. But I can't deal with the tsunami of maybe not so good information. I mean, it's just too much, right?
Right. And that is something with Twitter. So, maybe start off with 5 to 10 people or companies that you want to follow. And it could be, who are their C-level or VP level people? Yes, they have people posting for them, but it's a little different than just blankly following a company.
Right.
So maybe you want to target it. Maybe there's some thought leaders or someone that you read, whether it's in the journal or in a particular area that you like and respect their domain expertise. Start following them. But put those guardrails on so that it's exactly that. You're not triggered. And therefore, your urge to respond in a way that you may regret later is tempered. And you grow it. And so here's what you do. So you've got your real name or your professional Twitter handle, if you don't already have one. You set your guardrails to filter out sort of the outrage and the knee-jerk reaction. And then follow 5 to 10 people who you respect and read who's commenting. And if something resonates with you, follow that person. And it's interesting because your curiosity provides the breadcrumbs to get you where you need to go. And so this is how you merge onto the Twitter highway.
Okay. So my innate sense of establishing true north and being true to my priorities, because I know when I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to something else. How much time per day or per week do you really spend on Twitter? Or is this just a oh, hey, I've got a few minutes over lunch. I'm going to check my Twitter feed, maybe respond a few times, or before bed, oh, I'll check my Twitter feed, respond a few times. Does it take hours, a few minutes?
It's dependent on you and your attention. There are days where I won't log on to Twitter. I'm not trying to cultivate anything specifically, but I go there to see who the people I'm following, what they're saying, what some of the comments are. My husband, who's in finance, he uses Twitter solely for his news. He also is passionate about off-roading. We have a 1999 Land Cruiser. It is a tank. And he follows people who do off-roading and how you trick out your car. He also follows desktop metal and a lot of 3D printing. It's just where his interests go. And what's really interesting, I'll use him as an example, is yes, it can lead you down rabbit holes, but it also builds up your knowledge and expertise. So it's know your tendencies, dip your toe in. It's as much or as little as you want. I would say starting anything, spend 20 minutes a day to tend your Twitter garden. Ugh, I hate how that sounds. But, maybe it's 20 or 30 minutes a day. Set a timer. You're right. It can become a huge time suck. The other thing that I hear from people, so that's stage one. Stage two, if you have something to say or add, you can start liking. That doesn't really get you much, but you can retweet. And instead of just blanket retweeting it, same with LinkedIn or anywhere, add your own personal touch. I found this interesting because, or so-and-so is right on, or it could be crypto's the new math. I don't know what your opinion is. Say something very little when you retweet, but the person who originated that tweet, they will like you, maybe they will follow you. And that's how you build up following people. What you will also see is as you start to feel more comfortable, rather than just saying, oh, I so totally agree, is that's a really interesting perspective. I never thought of that. Or here's another piece of information. You start entering that conversation and you can dip your toe in. That's totally okay. And this got me as well. I hear it from a lot of people, but I'm not an expert. What do I have to say? Well, guess what? You become an expert by writing online, by responding. It's a learning process. Nobody expects you to be, that's the thing. Just say, hey, I'm just along to learn. This is what I've learned so far.
And that's actually what Hussein asked. He said, is the type of content that appears on your social media platform important to give a good image of the person? So yes, be yourself and know the rules of the game. So like we mentioned earlier, stay away from triggering themes, whether that be politics or religion or what have you. You know the culture you are in best. So we know that each culture, each social matrix has its own rules. And we want to show up in a way that we're not overly rocking the boat while still creating interest. We want good interest, not the other type. Right.
But I hear Hussein, maybe what you were asking too is you may be on Twitter, but what do your other platforms turn up? And what I would say is, again, it's your digital footprint. Don't put things out there that you feel could hinder you professionally.
Right.
But you can also, if you're in active job search or credibility mode, you limit who can see what in your profiles too, on the other platforms.
Yeah, with LinkedIn, I would not recommend limiting your visibility because you want to be found through a Google search, and that's how easy you would be found. As someone who's actively interested in career advancement, whether you're job seeking at that moment or not, if you want to be found for opportunities, you need to be visible. You need to be able to be searchable on Google, so you want that all your information to be publicly available. Now, LinkedIn has taken steps for privacy reasons, and they don't. Last time I checked, they no longer allow recruiters to see your email. So, which is really interesting. And it's making them a little mad because they want to be able to reach out to you directly and not just rely on InMail. And as you know, InMail can get kind of a deluge of buy our stuff. All the people wanting to sell something, and that can get lost. So they want to be able to reach out to you right away for a hot opportunity.
Sure. I guess let me rephrase that. Instagram or Facebook, where we tend to be more performative, personalized, unless it's, part of your business or brand.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah, so this is very interesting. So what I'm hearing so far is if you are leveraging Twitter as a thought platform to connect to key stakeholders in what we consider non-traditional, it's just not the obvious way, right? That we normally do that. We always think LinkedIn, or in-person networking. Well, guess what? We're not really doing many in-person events. So what else can we do? And we have technology, so we can leverage these tools. So we want to connect that to either who we are as an individual using our name or where we want to go, or both. Like, I don't know, if I was thinking about moving into quality, I would be Quality Aaron or something. I mean, whatever. Right? So that would definitely she's interested in, or a continuous improvement gal or whatever, right? So it would be something.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then engage in the conversation. Start engaging in the conversation, and also acknowledging by showing how much you appreciate other people's conversation by retweeting. Now, you mentioned something with me when we spoke before about threads, or was it conversations? There was something where there would be a conversational thread that you could hop on, and these were topical. I've seen this on Twitter, but I can't for the life of me figure out where to find it.
Sure. So just like anywhere, there are Twitter groups that you can join that are specific to it. But I'll ask a coaching question. Can you get a little bit more specific?
Yeah, so they're topical in nature. There might have been groups I was thinking of, but it's basically around a certain, so let's use career advancement as an example. Okay, people who are interested in career advancement, there's a career advancement conversation thread, and conversations around that topic are grouped by this topical heading. So you know where to find those types of conversations. Is that something like that exist, or is it really just groups and then the open forum?
So I'll give you an example. Financial Twitter is called FinTwit, and it's referred to, and so I love it. There's climate Twitter. There's these different groups, but again, I would say, it's like, are you going to try and boil the ocean, or are you going to get really specific? I think there's enough out there where you can get a sense of who's publishing, whether it's a study, whether it's an individual. Everyone has their little icon, follow me on Twitter. I think just go to the source.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the source. And I'm going to take a step back before I talk about Twitter just a little bit more. And I will say, I am not an expert at this, but I have seen it used and used effectively. And I'm going to go back up to the 50,000 foot view before we go back down to ground level. And, I worked as a career development specialist at U of H at the business school. And I worked with graduate students in business and finance, an executive MBA. So graduate MBA, Master's of Finance, exec MBA. I started off in career coaching as well before moving more towards, I like to call it career management. I still do some career coaching, but it's mostly, folks, hello.
Oh,
Not doing anything she shouldn't. Take me off camera if she is.
No. Okay. I don't see any bodily functions happening here.
All righty. But I've been having these career conversations with people my whole life. And it's just what I do. I've been in careers where they were great, then they weren't so great. And I just realized I love helping people get to the next stage, the next step, whatever that is. And that's when I pivoted more into the traditional sort of leadership and executive coaching. How do I move up? How do I navigate within this organization or my own career? But I'm rooted in career coaching. And so when I was at U of H, really had to mention again and again, everyone who applies for a job or shows up at a networking event is interested. What your role is as a graduate student or a job seeker is to be committed. So what does that mean? Think about a traditional American breakfast, bacon and eggs, right? Chicken's interested, the pig is committed.
Very good analogy.
And so
literally have skin in the game.
Right. So how do you demonstrate commitment? Well, if I had a student come to me or a client, and they were interested in going from, sort of the engineering side of oil and gas or the technical side to the financial and investment side. But, and they were getting their MBA or they were trying to make the transition internally. Well, write a research report, build a model. Like for those who really love spreadsheets, okay, it doesn't have to be correct. They just want to see that you're committed. This is something, it's more than an interest, you're committed. Write a one-page summary. Summarize articles. Even if it's about the new function or the new industry, and share that with people. Demonstrate your thinking.
Right.
And that's what you can do on Twitter. So it's not just being part of the Hallelujah choir, of, hey, I liked this. Say something about it.
Right.
Share your knowledge.
That's absolutely. You're on point there. There's just so many people who fall into the liking trap. Like a bunch of things. That doesn't do anything. Become a part of the conversation.
Yes.
And fun fact, LinkedIn links to Twitter. So if you post on LinkedIn, you can also post on Twitter. And if you write an article on LinkedIn or share a video, you can also share that on Twitter. 2-for-1 special. As a person who really values my time, let's be fair. The value of time is important. The bigger value is efficiency.
Yeah.
I'm a little nuts about efficiency, like probably why I got into continuous improvement. Probably. Anyway. And I'm an efficiently career advancement coach now. I should put that as my tagline, efficient career advancement, instead of executive. Efficient.
I love it.
I don't know. Is that sexy enough? I don't know. But anyway, I digress. So as someone who values efficiency, being able to have that conversation on 2 important platforms for careers, sounds like, is very valuable. And then, don't just, what do they say, post and run. Follow up, have conversations. Again, we got to think of it like, it sounds a little bit like if you do go to an in-person networking event. Are you going to run up to somebody and go, hi, Lindsay, my name is Erin. Here's my card. And this is what I do. And I want to do this other thing. Great talking to you. Bye. No, because that would be weird.
Yes.
You don't do that on social media either. I mean, you can post and run, but it probably isn't going to get you anywhere. Now, he was saying, I wanted to expand upon his earlier question, if I may, Lindsey, if that's okay. He said, some appear with two personalities and two opinions. In other words, we're talking about authenticity a little bit, perhaps. And, is this a real profile or maybe not? He represents an organization, represents himself in both cases. I think you said he's talking about someone now. Who's saying, are you storytelling with someone here? The personal opinion on a particular issue may negatively affect the organization and its clients because of that personal opinion in a social or political issue.
Yes.
What is the advice for such behavior? I have been in this situation before a little bit, but not intentionally. I was sharing something from a prior company and best practices, and my senior vice president of the business unit came by my office. Hi, Erin, I saw your article on LinkedIn. We don't do that here. Oh, you're right. You don't. Yeah. So, what's your advice for such behavior when you post something might not reflect so well on your current organization?
Well, it goes back to, I understand authenticity, but what is going to help you and what is going to damage you?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's going to damage you professionally, don't do it.
Right. Exactly. Be very careful and cautious. It's just like going to an interview. You don't want to throw your prior organizations and or people in said organizations under the bus in any way. You really do want to take the high road. For me, it was a very interesting scenario because a part of me becoming a thought leader was sharing best practices and lessons learned out of particular scenarios. I really had to be very careful about how I approach those. And of course, I never mentioned names or companies or anything like that. But because I didn't, it's easy to assume I was talking about my current company, which was not the case.
Right.
Right. So it just really, it actually almost made me back out of, and in fact, it's probably one of the reasons why I stopped posting articles in that thought leadership space, because it was just a little too charged, and I like getting a paycheck.
You use your judgment. You use your judgment, and it's okay. So this goes back to, if you've got a professional face of an organization with your specific name, then set up a pseudonym account.
Mm-hmm.
It not to be stealthy or what have you, but so that you can explore more freely.
That's a good point. Now, my question for you, Lindsey, is if you do set up a pseudonym and you're having a conversation with a key stakeholder, decision maker, how does that help you? Because they can't really find, oh, this is Erin Urban, and I can access her LinkedIn profile, right? Because if you're a quality gal, maybe not.
They DM you. People will reach out in your DMs, direct message. And that's when you can have those offline conversations.
Okay, great. That's very insightful. Does that happen fairly frequently? I'm totally ignorant.
It depends. It depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
It truly depends on the person. I know that for some people, and people that I know, when they moved on to Twitter in this very specific way and they started sharing their knowledge, things exploded for them, like in the best way possible. They had no idea. And it just was like, gosh, I never knew that I could share my idea.
And she agrees.
Yeah, she does. She's too cute. Sorry, guys. She already's been adopted. She's just with me for another night or two. But, it's just another avenue. And like I said, especially if your LinkedIn profile and you're making a career switch and it doesn't reflect where you want to go or what you want to do or what you're capable of, Twitter's a great way to showcase your interests, your knowledge, to build your knowledge. And just as I mentioned that you can ease into the Twitter highway by following the breadcrumbs of people you want to learn more from, you're leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for future employers. You're helping them find you, and you're no longer solely dependent on AI algorithms and applicant tracking systems for jobs.
It's very true. I mean, when I coach professionals through what we call influence coaching, and that's being out there more. You're sharing your thoughts. You're not becoming a Richard Branson, but that's not the point. Is you're out there sharing your thoughts. You're becoming so you can find people. People can find you. That's important. You're staying top of mind.
Yeah, top of mind, and you're becoming three-dimensional. People can see how you think. It's not the humble brag. It's not the announcing. That has its place. Don't get me wrong. But again, this is an incredible job market. If you're on the low-end skills, with a very high turnover and entry level, and as all of these companies got rid of director level positions and senior positions to save money during, COVID and the uncertainty, well, yeah, they're ramping up really, really quickly. How can they find you? But in that middle, it still can be challenging. And why wouldn't you make it as easy as possible for people to see what value you bring, your thought process, how you think, what ideas, what skill set or knowledge that doesn't show up in your other profiles?
Absolutely. That's a great thought. I mean, it's just like I coach people, if you are looking to make a pivot or get into the career market at all, when you're talking about elevating your influence, you want to talk about where you want to go and items that are relevant there, not just where you've been, which is important. I mean, where you've been sets the stage, but where are you going? And most importantly, how are you resonating in that space?
Yeah.
Because when you're sharing your thoughts at this level, you're sharing a little bit of you, something they won't get on a resume, something they may not get from your LinkedIn profile, right? So this is a little bit of you, and it's almost like they kind of know you before they reach out, and that really shortens the process, which right now interviewing is a process. I got off the phone with a client, former client, and he's looking again, and he was just touching base with me. He's like, this one company had me go through 16 interviews. 16. What? Oh my gosh. Anyway.
I call that the marking the territory company, where everyone's got to lift their leg and mark their spot.
We can tell that she's a dog lover. I love that. That's funny. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we can answer any questions anyone has. And if you're tuning in later, don't be shy. Feel free to either reach out directly to either one of us or comment on the video, because we will see it and we will get back to you. And of course, as you know, we're always available on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Either way, we can reach out to us if you do have any questions. And we certainly want to help you ease onto the Twitter highway and make those conversations relevant to where you want to evolve in your career. Lindsey, is there anything that I didn't ask that people should know?
I wouldn't say ask. And like I said, it's culture and country specific.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, there are asymmetric risks to using Twitter as part of your job search and writing online. What we fear in terms of risk has a lower probability of a negative impact than the upside can be a factor of 10.
Very, very succinctly put. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's tremendous. And thank all of you for tuning in. And like I mentioned before, don't be shy if you do have questions. Later on, something pops in your head after the show is over, or after you watch the replay or listen to the podcast, feel free to reach out to us directly. And as always, my friends, my biggest wish for you is to keep elevating. Until next time.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.